The Marineford Saga, starting from Sabaody Archipelago going to the Summit War, was a storyline of humiliation for the Straw Hat Pirates, and particularly for Luffy. Defeat after defeat, failure after failure, humbling experience after humbling experience, this was one of the most extensive, dragged-out storylines you will ever see about teaching the main characters the simple lesson that you are not ready yet. All of this makes sense as the final saga to close out Act 1 of One Piece because this entire storyline set up for one of the most satisfying experiences in storytelling. Revenge. Sweet revenge. That's what the final saga of Act 2 of One Piece is set up to deliver on. Even during his losses in Act 1, Luffy vows that one day his crew will become strong enough to get revenge on the characters that have beaten them down. And by the end of the Marineford saga, Luffy would add more names like Akainu and Blackbeard to that list. Well, now it's finally time. We are past Doflamingo, past Big Mom, past Kaido. We are back where we left off the first time around. It is finally time to take on Kizaru, Blackbeard, Akainu, and all those guys that made the Straw Hats suffer 2 years ago. After 500 chapters, the Straw Hats are back for round 2, and Egghead Island is set to be the launching point for the greatest revenge tour in shonen manga history. And that is what we're going to be breaking down today. But there is one thing that might hold Luffy back, one thing that he's been missing that I've realized all of the legendary pirates have. Kaido, Blackbeard, Mihawk, they've all got it. And that is great facial hair. Hell, even I've got that thanks to Manscape, the sponsor for this video. Look at yourself in the mirror right now. What do you see? Guess what? Your days of being unattractive are over. You could look like the live-action Mihawk if you want. The power of a beard is that you can look like whatever you want to look like. You can accentuate your jawline, you can hide your lack of a jawline, you can look mysterious, smart, sophisticated, badass, but you need good tools to shape your appearance or else you just look homeless. Manscaped gives you the tools to transform your appearance. With Manscaped, you get a beard hedge trimmer with 20 different cutting lengths built in, so you can choose exactly the look that you want to go for. And you can guarantee that your beard grows in evenly and smoothly and not patchy with Manscaped's beard oil. If you want your beard to look full and healthy, Manscaped comes with high-quality beard shampoo and conditioner. And with the Pro Kit, you even get beard scissors, a beard comb, and a beard brush. From today on, you're gonna f***ing look good. And I want all my viewers to look good. So go to manscaped.com today and get 20% off plus free shipping when you use promo code MORGE at checkout. That's 20% off plus free international shipping with promo code MORGE at manscaped.com. So that aside, to begin with, one thing I've already talked about in past videos is how Egghead is playing out like a reverse Sabaody Archipelago. Sabaody is where the Straw Hats' string of defeats began, and Egghead seems like where their string of revenge victories will begin. We already had a pretty clear parallel setup where Sabaody began with the Straw Hats having to fight Vegapunk's new creations, the Pacifista, and they were barely able to even handle one before being overwhelmed by the arrival of more Pacifistas. The Pacifistas alone had the Straw Hats shaken and near their limits. However, here in Egghead we see the reverse. The Straw Hats begin the arc having to fight Vegapunk's new and far more powerful creations, the Seraphim. But this time around, the Straw Hats have a much easier time handling them. And even though they are certainly tricky to deal with, the tone throughout the Seraphim encounters is much lighter, and the conflict is ultimately resolved without too much difficulty for the crew. This establishes the concept of what the rest of this arc and what most of the final saga is set to be. The Straw Hats facing old challenges that once bested them, but this time coming out on top, which is why it's so satisfying that the next opponent on the chopping block is Kizaru. Before we talk about Kizaru, it should be noted that it was also very satisfying to see that Sentomaru needed to be saved by Luffy. After all, Sentomaru was one of the key figures that Luffy wanted to one day surpass after Sentomaru gave Luffy a beatdown at Sabaody. And while it turns out that Sentomaru is ultimately a sympathetic figure, it's almost more satisfying to see this guy needing to be protected by Luffy. Oda doesn't even need to write in a revenge scene against Sentomaru, since Luffy saving Sentomaru and actually easily defeating the enemy that defeated Sentomaru is almost more embarrassing. But of course, at the end of the day, the main figure from Sabaody that we really wanted to see Luffy one day defeat was Kizaru. And man, this one is going to feel good, because in Sabaody, what Kizaru represents represented was, essentially, the proof that the Straw Hats are not free. See, in Sabaody we were introduced to the Celestial Dragons, and it was explained to us that everyone is under the thumb of the Celestial Dragons. No one, truly no one, can defy them. Because if you do, a Marine Admiral will come in and punish you. The rule of the Celestial Dragons is simply absolute. Now, Luffy is supposed to represent freedom. He even explains in Sabaody that the Pirate King is the freest man. The freest man should be able to punch a Celestial Dragon that deserves it and get away with it, right? Well, too bad. Turns out even Luffy can't do that, because a Marine Admiral will come in and lay down the law, and there is absolutely nothing that Luffy or anyone on his crew can do about it. Despite everything the Straw Hats had gotten away with up till that point, despite all of their acts of rebellion and various victories, in Sabaody Archipelago they are finally shown that they are not as free as they thought. Even they are not above the law. Because when the world government really decides to bring the hammer down, the Straw Hats are just as helpless as other pirates. And the character that represented that hammer was Kizaru. Kizaru was the proof that the Straw Hats are not yet free. That Luffy is not the freest man, that even Luffy can't just spit in the face of the world government and get away with it. It's interesting that even in Egghead Island, Kizaru himself seems to almost acknowledge that this is his role in the story. A cog in the machine, a powerful tool for the world government. Kizaru serves his purpose, and here in Egghead he is supposed to serve that same purpose yet again, the same way that he did in Sabaody. Once again, Luffy has broken some major rules of the world government, and once again Kizaru is the hammer being brought down upon him. Only this time, we're going to get the sweet satisfaction of Luffy showing that now, at this point in time, nobody can bring the hammer down on him. At this point in time, Luffy can give a giant middle finger to the world government anytime he wants, and there is absolutely no one they can send after him to do anything about it. As Luffy tells Kizaru, this is not the same as 2 years ago. Luffy is way too strong to be stopped now. But this moment of turning the tables on Kizaru is not going to be satisfying just for what it means symbolically, but also on a personal level. People forget this, but the character that most personally bullied Luffy by far throughout the Marineford saga was Kizaru. Not just by leading the assault that nearly wiped out Luffy's crew at Sabaody, but during the Marineford battle itself. Kizaru was the bane of Luffy's existence. Anytime Luffy thought he was making progress, Kizaru would show up, take his lunch money, and send him to the back of the line while making fun of him. It's actually kind of insane. If you read Marineford, Kizaru kicked Luffy across the battlefield, not one, not two, but 3 times, on 3 totally separate occasions. Luffy's out here fighting with absolute desperation to save his brother, and this complete troll Kizaru keeps just casually popping up at the speed of light, making fun of how slow Luffy is, and then sending him flying backwards, deleting a bunch of Luffy's progress. There could not have been a more infuriating figure for Luffy across his entire journey to that platform. So the amount of sheer satisfaction we may be poised to get to see Luffy finally be able to get the one-up on Kizaru, his bogeyman throughout the Marineford War, is set to be the biggest highlight of Egghead Island. But it doesn't stop there. Egghead isn't just about Kizaru. The Straw Hat Pirates as a whole have this giant armada of Marines to look forward to. It should go without saying that the Marines in general have been the largest, most consistent force that has harassed the crew throughout their journey. And the thing is that outside of Shell's Town, there has never been another time throughout all 1,000 chapters in One Piece that the Straw Hats have actually bested the Marines. The Marines have always been the group that the Straw Hats ultimately have to flee from. It doesn't matter how satisfying of a victory that the Straw Hats have during an arc, when the Marines show up at the end, it's time for them to run. Because the Straw Hats have just never been powerful enough to actually be able to take on the heavyweights of the Marines. Even just trying to temporarily hold out against the forces of a Buster Call for a couple of chapters in Enies Lobby was nearly too much. But now, finally, we have a storyline where the Straw Hats are a Yonko-level crew, meaning in theory, they can take on their longest running and most annoying nemesis throughout the story head on. After 1,000 chapters of the Marines constantly spoiling the Straw Hats' departures from islands, finally, the whole crew can participate in giving the Marines a long overdue beatdown. And let's not forget Zoro versus Lucci. Luffy already beat Lucci once pre-time skip, but that was a hard-fought win that pushed him to his limit, that Luffy barely pulled out by the skin of his teeth. Now in Egghead Island, Luffy got the satisfaction of an easy victory lap against Lucci. But you know who never got his revenge against Lucci? Zoro. People forget, but Lucci is one of the rare arc bosses in the story that actually gets to defeat Zoro, who Zoro never gets redemption against. This little matchup between the two is actually low-key also some overdue payback from all the way back in Water 7. And really, to me, all of these early matchups in Egghead seem like a taste of what the final saga seems like it's going to be all about. Showcasing the Straw Hats' growth, of course, but really it's about some good old-fashioned payback. Because these guys, Kizaru, Lucci, the Buster Call Squad, these are just the warm-up dummies. We haven't even gotten to Blackbeard, who was not only the cause for the death of Luffy's brother, but who has also been going after the Straw Hats' friends and allies left and right. Law, Hancock, Pudding, Kobe, and so on, and of course Akainu, who actually killed Ace himself, not to mention Robin's entire hometown. If you think Luffy's not walking around the New World with a list in mind, you're definitely mistaken. Luffy knows who's wronged him, and he has not forgotten. This is the payoff that the entire Marineford saga served to set up. All that pain and humiliation that the Straw Hats went through was for the sake of this part of the story, where they come back and wreck all these motherfuckers and show what they can really do. Because yeah, they might have been put in their place a couple years back, but really they just needed a bit of time to catch up. That's why all the arcs so far in the New World have specifically not been against the Straw Hats' old demons. They've been against other newer villains like Horty Jones, Caesar Clown, Doflamingo, Big Mom, Kaido, and so on. Oda was deliberately saving all of the Straw Hats' enemies from pre-time skip for this final saga, holding them all off till the Straw Hats leveled up sufficiently to be able to give them a well-deserved beatdown. That's not to say that the Straw Hats won't have their struggles along the way in this saga, but the point is that most of the leveling up that they needed to do has been done already. After Egghead Island, the whole world better be on watch, because it's going to be very clear that the Straw Hats are ready to tear through the New World and dish out some punishment of their own this time around. So let me know what you want to see the most from the Straw Hats' Revenge tour below. Are there any particular matchups or moments that you're looking forward to? And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like and subscribe. And you can get my thoughts on certain matchups Oda has avoided so far on my weekly podcast by supporting me on Patreon. Link in the description below.